I'm launching now the YouTube. In the meantime, we'll have a quick brief. Anyone wants to give a brief summary what we did yesterday? What we read? We read Prabhupada's the writing poem by spiritual master. So
that he got initiated yesterday.
Yeah.
First and second. His name is up.
He is
when he was with his spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was able to speak more freely with him, whereas all the other devotees were actually scared to talk or be by themselves with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yeah, there's a lot of respect. He also had respect, but he was very confident.
Yeah, his spiritual master would tell him many personal.
Yeah. So basically, final section we read was he was in Bombay, right? Am I right? He's Bombay. He helped the devotees in Bombay. Is Sridhar Bhakti Rakshaka Sridhar Swami Maharaj, and who was in collecting funds and developing the Bombay Center. Then his spiritual master, he wrote the beautiful prayers on his appearance day, right? So we finished. We will continue from here. Gentle. This is Abhay also composed the speech. So this is the speech Abhay has composed. So we will read this again. Gentlemen, the offerings of such a homage as has been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev is not a sectarian concept, because when we speak of the fundamental principles of Gurudev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my Guru from that of your or anyone else. So it's a very mature explanation actually is giving. Sometimes people have bodily consciousness of my Guru, your Guru, the feelings, but he said that Guru is a Guru Tattva, Gurudev is a universal principle in application. There's only one Guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me and all others. The Guru or Acharya Dev, as we learn from the bona fide scriptures, delivers the message of the absolute world, which is spiritual world. I mean the transcendental abode of the absolute personality, where everything non-differentially serves the absolute truth. So here it says that Acharya, the Guru, is the one who actually gives knowledge about the absolute world of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where everything non-differentially serves, which the world where everything serves becomes the subservient or servant of Lord Krishna. Like the poem, the speech was personal, but even more than the poem, it was authoritative, philosophical preaching. The God brothers were impressed to hear Abhay presenting the Vaishnava philosophy so expertly. How was it possible? Of course, it was not have come as a surprise. He had heard the Vaishnava philosophy from Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, just like his God brothers. Why should he not be able to enunciate the teachings of his spiritual master, having heard from him and having read Gita and Bhagavatam, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? Because his spiritual master instructed him to read the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, right? If you all remember. Was he not a devotee in the parampara? But until now, no one knew he could preach in English so expertly. So it looks like Prabhupada first time opened up, very genuinely spoke, and everybody is very impressed. Sometimes you feel you undermine, oh, he's a grahastha, he's not committed, he's like that. I think those feelings, and he's a new devotee. But we don't know who receives the mercy of the Lord. Therefore, if the absolute truth is one about which we think there is no difference of opinion, the Guru also cannot be two. The Acharya Dev to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage is not the guru of a sectarian institution or one out of many differing exponents of the truth. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru or the Guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly while others do not obey him directly. That's the difference. Otherwise, Guru is one. Go on, you want to read.
The Guru of whom Abhay spoke, of course, was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the representative of the original compiler of the scriptures, Vyasdev. Abhay explained how Lord Krishna had delivered transcendental knowledge to Brahma, the creator of this particular universe. From Brahma, the knowledge had descended to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, from Vyasa to Madhva. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was presenting the Vedic knowledge as is, without any interpretation, in parampara, he was a bona fide acharya who could enlighten others with the revealed knowledge of the Vedas. Abhay continued, Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us to have even the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vasudev or his bona fide representative. This transcendental knowledge, Abhay explained, had been known in India for thousands of years, and this knowledge, although presently obscured, was India's real gift to the world. So in summary, Abhay was speaking about the disciplic succession, how Krishna delivered the knowledge to Brahma, and then from Brahma to Narad Muni, and Narad Muni to Vyasa, from Vyasa to Madhva, and so on. And coming down to disciplic succession, it was showing that, explain how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a bona fide acharya who was able to enlighten others. And Abhay continues saying that if one doesn't surrender themselves under Vyasadev or a bona fide spiritual master, then they won't understand and they'll be left in the darkness. And this transcendental knowledge is the real gift of India.
And he stated the authenticity because it's coming from the parampara.
We must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement, which is the prime necessity of human life and the criteria on the highest type of civilization. Throwing of bombs from aeroplanes is no advancement of civilization. From the primitive, uncivilized way of dropping big stones on the head of the enemies from the top of the hills. Improvement of the art of killing our neighbors by inventing machine guns and by means of poisonous gases is certainly no advancement from primitive barbarism priding itself on its arts of killing by bows and arrows. Nor does the development of a sense of pampered selfishness prove anything more than intellectual animalism. Thus, while others were yet in the womb of historical oblivion, the sages of India had developed a different kind of civilization, which enables us to know ourselves. They had discovered that we are not at all material entities, but we are all spiritual, permanent, and non-destructible servant of the Absolute.
With you all, give me a second. I will copy and paste for awakening in our Krishna village. Let people read, and I want to send some of the you all can. I think it's very good, right? No need to. This itself is the contents itself is. So basically, here it says, and the present age, darkness of the present age is not because of the lack of advanced material advance, it's based on the lack of the spiritual disconnection, which is prime necessity of human life. Simply trying to create aeroplanes sophisticated. I was wondering, these people gathering, these different countries in the ocean. Have you noticed? Have you heard about it? The scene, right? In the ocean, they're with their aircraft and warships, everything they're gathered. I say, what are you going to do in the water? Maybe they want to save the people, protect the people from the land, but you're disturbing the creatures in the water. And they're going and throwing the missiles and everything. It's weird. And improvement. This is called intellectual animalism. Dropping is kind of primitive, again, you uncivilized way you're trying to do what you're doing, dropping big stones on the heads of the enemies from the tops of the hills. So that's not a real civilized things. So it's condemned. Thus, while others were yet in what Prabhupada is saying, while people are still future generation, but the sages have developed different kind of civilization, enable us to know ourselves, which helps us to self-realization, to know about ourselves. Okay, Cyclone Prabhu, you can go ahead. 1 minute.
The speech continued, describing the horrible consequences of a misspent human life, the sufferings of repeated birth and death. Again and again, Abhay stressed the need to surrender to the spiritual master. He criticized empirical, mundane philosophers, godless politicians, and blind sense gratifiers. He repeatedly pointed to the soul's natural and sublime position as the servant of the God and as the servant of the pure devotee of God. Abhay, an initiated disciple of his spiritual master for a little more than 2 years, referring to himself as a student, continued, "Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still His divine grace, my Gurudeva, has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invisible darkness of the empirical knowledge. And we are so much so on the safe side that no amount of philosophical argument of the empiric schools of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of our eternal dependence on the lotus feet of His divine grace. And we are prepared to challenge the most erudite scholars of the Mayavada school on this vital issue, that the personality of Godhead and its transcendental sports in Goloka alone constitute the sublime information of the Vedas." So here, Bhaktivedanta, like Srila Prabhupada, is basically giving the speech. He is giving the importance of surrendering to the spiritual master, and what are the consequences of repeated birth and death if we don't surrender to the spiritual master. And he criticized all the mundane philosophers and politicians, and he also like, even though he was just an initiated disciple for more than 2 years, he was mentioning that the soul is basically a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and it is its eternal position is the servant of the God, and it is a servant of the pure devotee of the God. And then he also says that, like, because of the Gurudeva, like, it has kindled a fire within all of us to remove the darkness of the empirical knowledge, and basically we are ready to challenge the Mayavada school on one important issue, which is that the ultimate goal of all the Vedas is the personality, supreme personality of Godhead, and his transcendental pastimes in Goloka.
So basically, glorifying because of the mercy of the spiritual master who actually dissipated the invincible darkness of empirical knowledge. And next is.
Okay. Then he ended his speech with an eloquent prayer of submission. Personally, I have no hope to have any direct service for the coming crores of births of the sojourn of my life, but I am confident that someday or other I should be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am at present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me with all my earnests pray at the lotus feet of my divine master to let me suffer the lot which I am destined to do for all my past misdoings, but to let me have this power of recollection that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the Almighty Absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my Divine Master. Let me therefore bow down at his lotus feet with all the humanity at my command. Do I continue, Prabhu?
You can summarize now.
Okay. So it basically like he ended like Prabhupada ended his speech with like an inclined prayer of submission, and it was like he personally, I have no hope. He has no hope to have any like direct service from the um, crores of births of the sojourn of his life, like that, and he's also confident. What? He's praying at the lotus feet of his divine master to like suffer a lot which I am destined for his misdeeds he did before, and to have the power of recollection. And he also says that he is the little servant of the Almighty Absolute Godhead through the unflinching mercy of his divine master. And then he says he bows down at his lotus feet with all humility at my command.
Oh, thank you. Very nice you did. So he's very humbly submitting, isn't it, Samarth?
Yeah.
Nice, thank you. Yeah.
He submitted both the poem and speech to the harmonist. The poem, Abhai's first publication, announced him as a competent writer in English, and Swami Bhakti Pradipa Tirtha, editor of the harmonist, informally dubbed Abhai as Kavi, learned poet. Some of Abhai's godbrothers also picked up on the name and began calling him Kavi. Most of them, even the sannyasis, were not so proficient in English, but Abhay was not ordinary. They could appreciate that the poem was personal, written out of Abhay's genuine worship and his joy at having accepted a genuine spiritual master. But it was also written strictly in accord with the conclusions of the scriptures. For Abhay, however, the glory of his Sri Vyasa Puja homage came when the poem reached Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and it gave him pleasure. One stanza specifically made Srila Bhakti Siddhanta so happy that he made a point of showing it to all of his guests.
That is absolutely sentient. Thou last proved impersonal calamity. Thou hast moved. Nice. You wanna say?
He submitted his poem and speech to the harmonist, the
Magazine.
yeah, harmonist magazine, and the editor, writer in English, the editor of the harmonist described him as a kavi, and all his god brothers sannyasis also began calling him kavi. He wrote that he wrote it in a very proficient manner in English, and
at the same time, it is
worship,
as
genuine
the
worship.
conclusions of the Shastras. It is not just a poet, but it is as per the Shastras. That's what everybody was wondering. Like Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes so many poems, and that's as per the Shastras. So that everyone appreciated so much. and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he came as Vyaspuja homage, because he was not there. I think he presented in Bombay, and this Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sees in the harmonist, and he showed to his devotees, other disciples. He was so happy, especially when he heard this portion of the poem made him very happy, right?
Yes.
Swati Mataji, you can read.
Ab- Absolute is sentient.
No, where are you seeing?
Somehow,
Oh, yeah, okay. Somehow.
sorry. Somehow, in this simple couplet, Abhay had captured the essence of his spiritual master, preaching again the Mayavadis. And Sri Bhaktivedanta took it an indication of how well Abhay know the mind of his Gurudev. Abhay was delighted when he heard that the couple was pleased to his spiritual
Couplet.
sorry
Couplet.
couplet was pleasing to his spiritual master. One of the Abhay's god brother compared his verse by Abhay in a verse in which Rupa Goswami has expressed the inner thinking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had thus moving him to ecstasy. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also found the easy pleasing, and he showed it to some of his confidential devotees. He instructed the editor of the Harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it.
Yeah, now you can summarize.
Sure, Prabhu. So here, his spiritual master Abhay was captured to the all his poems, whatever he wrote. He presented towards to his guru, to his spiritual master, and he liked it. And one of his godbrother has compared his writings with the Rupa Goswami's expressions in the Chaitanya about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
You all remember the story, right? When, it's not easy to understand the heart of the Lord and devotees, spiritual master. If you understand the heart of Lord and spiritual master, it means you're blessed. So even that happened with Yamunacharya also. When Yamunacharya could understand, it was Yamunacharya, no, Ramanujacharya. He could understand the heart of his spiritual master also. So it is same incident happened at Rupa Goswami understood heart of Lord Chaitanya, and that's why it's being compared. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur was very pleased to see that one. When our body, mind, soul, and actions, everything is aligned with the super soul, we can understand the spiritual master's desire. That's why one of the prayer of Bhakti Prabhupada is, what is the second portion of the prayer? Can anyone tell? We have two prayers of Bhakti Prabhupada. Our Prabhupada's. Namaste Saraswati
Devi, Gauravani Pracharine.
Nirbhisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desataya. Nirbhisesa Sunyavadi, in impersonalism, voidism. To eradicate the Western countries from the impersonalism, voidism, and past Saraswati Devi, it was desired to serve the desire of Saraswati, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So this statement is very nice for that prayer. So he said that whatever he writes, he should be published. Generally, you cannot just publish. Everybody comes to somebody has to request, and it has to be reviewed and then certified or approved. Then it's published. But here he gets the green signal. Okay, who else is? AJ, you can read.
Sure, thank you. I thought it only natural that he should have many business enemies or competitors.
Your voice is a little low.
Hold on, let me Let me try again. Is that better or no?
Yeah, this is better. Yes.
Okay. Abai thought it was only natural that he should have many business enemies or competitors. It was a sign of success. But his Bombay competition caused him to lose another good chance to become wealthy. The enemy was the son of Abai's supervisor at Smith Institute. Both son and father complained to the Smith Institute executives that Abai Charandi was pushing goods from his own laboratory and not Smith's. By this intrigue, Abai lost his position with Smith Institute, and his supervisor placed his own son as the new agent. Abai was again on his own. While continuing to help his sannyasi godbrothers in Bombay, he found a two-story building for rent in Galia Tank Road. Everyone agreed it would make for a suitable center, and Abai arranged for the rental and for the initial repairs and helped the sannyasis move in. It seemed that his endeavors for spiritual things were always successful, whereas his business efforts were consistently failing. Of course, a few business enemies were no cause for discouragement. Intrigue and losses were always part of the game, and he was still well known in the pharmaceutical business throughout India. But it wasn't so much the give and take of business that disturbed him as his own doubts about whether this was the best way for him to serve his spiritual master. Business was good only if it could go side by side with the spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya had said that the chanting of Hare Krishna should be spread to every town and village, and Abai wanted to assist his spiritual master in fulfilling that prophecy, especially by contributing money, helping establish centers. His earnings should not go solely for his family. So this just kind of talks about the, his business stumbles where another one of his competitors within the firm he worked for had kind of sabotaged him a little bit and caused him to lose his job, and and then lose the position completely when someone else was installed in the same position. It also talks about how he helped found a center in Bombay, taking care of taking care of the costs and maintenance out of his own pocket. And I think that the line that really sticks out is the one where it seemed that his endeavors for spiritual things were always successful, whereas business efforts were consistently failing. You could almost interpret it as a sign of, someone trying to tell him, Krishna trying to tell him exactly like, you're going the wrong way, right? Focus solely on the spiritual, I'll take care of the rest. But it's just kind of about the state of his financial life and business life.
Thank you. So looks like he's, spiritually, whatever he's contributed is going well. And Pranath, you can read.
Yes. Ideally, family life and spiritual life should progress side by side. But the difficulty was Abai's wife. She was disturbed over the business losses and apathetic to the spiritual successes. She wanted to stay within the orbit of home and family, and despite Abai's suggestions, she refused to accept initiation from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It was his own wife who was his most formidable competitor, and she waged her opposition right in the home where it was least welcome. When Abai occasionally visited his family in Allahabad, he tried to satisfy them with his good intentions. Business had not gone so well in Bombay, but he had new plans and he assured his family that there was no need to worry. He planned to do more preaching in his home. The whole family could become more involved in spiritual activities. He wanted to invite guests, hold discussions on Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, perform kirtana, distribute prasadam. He wanted to preach just as his spiritual master and god brothers were preaching. Such a program wouldn't require that a sannyasi or brahmachari come and preside. Abai could do it himself. This would be an example of the ideal household life. But Radharani was unsubmissive. Rather than coming to hear him speak, she stayed with the children in another room taking tea. Uh, just we are here hearing about that Lord Prabhupada and his wife were not on the same page. While Prabhupada had big plans and ambitions and just that genuine desire to preach as per his spiritual master's instructions. But his wife was uh, not very favorable. In fact, she was opposing some of the things that he had planned for. And even when Abhay visited his family, he tried to, I guess, keep them happy, satisfy them. Uh, uh, and he wanted to preach, um, and he could do it himself by not requiring any sannyasi or a brahmachari to come. And it was a perfect example of how to lead a household life um, in cooperation with his wife. But we see that it was not all appropriate or favorable.
Hmm. He thinks, seems he got a very good, there's a purpose behind it so that he gets real realization about this world. Otherwise, his writings, so much of experiences, realizations he writes in the book. That is a great. I think Krishna has his own plan tuned in such a way that he carries personal examples, also many things. Okay, who else is there? Prasanti, please.
In Bombay, Abhay associated with Siddhanta Sridhara Maharaja and Bhakti Saranga Goswami. Both sannyasis were highly literate scholars. Sridhara Maharaja was respected for his erudition in the Shastras, and Bhakti Saranga Goswami for his writing and preaching in English. Sometimes Abhay would discuss his realizations with them. Abhay also studied the scriptures on his own. His spiritual master's commentary on Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, as well as commentaries by the previous acharyas. While reading Viswanatha Chakravarti Thakura's commentary on Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, 41st verse, he read that the disciple should consider the order of the spiritual master to be his life and soul. These words produced a deep effect on Abhay, strengthening his desire to execute Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's command. And in the 88th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he came upon a verse in which Lord Krishna said something that startled him. Yasyaham anugrahnami harisyetad dhyanam sanaihi tato dhyanam tyajante asya swajana dukkha dukkitam.
You can read that.
When I feel especially mercifully disposed towards someone, I gradually take away all his material possessions, his friends and relatives, then reject this poverty-stricken and most wretched fellow. His friends and relatives then reject this poverty-stricken and most wretched fellow. Abhay shuddered as he read the verse. It seemed to speak directly to him. But what did it mean? Does it mean he thought Krishna will take away all my money? Was that what was actually happening? Was that why these business plans were failing? He discussed the meaning of the verse with Sridhara Maharaja. Yes, Sridhara Maharaja confirmed this might very well be what was happening between Lord Krishna and Abhay. Abhay not only Abhay was associating with two devotees, Sridhar Maharaja and Bhakti Saranga Goswami, and he often associates with them and discusses his realizations to understand better. And he also reads Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. While he was reading commentaries on previous acharyas and his own and also his own spiritual masters' commentaries, while he was reading Bhagavad Gita, he he found a sloka in the second chapter, 41st verse, where he reads that whatever instructions the spiritual master gave should be should be done without any deviation, and we have to strictly observe that. And it has a profound effect on Abhay because he already got the instruction as soon as he met the spiritual master that you have to preach in the Western world. So that was always in the background of Abhay's mind. And he also read another verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, 88th chapter, 10th canto. In that, it describes how a devotee's life will be transformed upon the mercy of Krishna. Like whenever Krishna is merciful and want to give him more, he takes away all his property. He for the outside world, it seems that he is in a big trouble, but he takes away all his material possessions and completely moves him to the path of bhakti. And Abhay was looking at his own life and was wondering what's going on. And he compares and he asks Sridhar Maharaja, and he confirms where it might very well be the case.
Yeah, so it's like awakening for him. So what is happening? And he came up to this. That gave him a lot of strength. Sridhar Swami Maharaj, even though he was a sannyasi, he's been long time friend. And after Prabhupada came, Sridhar Maharaj was with him. Not he was with him, means he supported him while in India. But later so many things had happened. But I hope everybody got that point. And Krishna has special mercy. This thing can happen. Srikar?
In July 1935, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came to install the deity of Lord Krishna and to institute deity worship at the Bombay Center. He was pleased with what his disciples had done so far, and Bhakti Saranga Maharaj admitted that much of the work was due to Abhay Babu, who had collected funds and established the new center. Why is Abhay living separately? Bhakti Saranga asked. He should be president of this Bombay Center. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati replied, "It is better that he is living outside your company. He will do. When the time comes, he will do everything himself. You don't have to recommend him." Abhay had not been present when this was spoken, but his god brothers told him what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had said. These words of his spiritual master, with their mysteriously prophetic air, were important to Abhay. He treasured the words within himself and meditated upon their meaning. So here we see that in July of 1935, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he visits Bombay to install the deities of Lord Krishna in their Bombay center. And then he was very pleased with all the arrangements that his disciples had made. And one of the sannyasi's disciple, Bhakti Saranga Maharaj, said that most of the contribution was from Abhay, Srila Prabhupada. Like Prabhupada made a very significant contribution in establishing that center. And then so he thought, okay, then since he's so dedicated, then he recommended, saying that why is Prabhupada living separately? He should be made the president of this Bombay center. And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur replies saying that when time comes, he'll do everything on his own. So at the moment, let him be where he is. So that's what Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur says. And then Srila Prabhupada gets to hear this from one of his god brother, like what his spiritual master had said. And then when he heard that, he treasured the words within himself, and he secretly meditated upon the meaning.
Yes. It's a very nice experience, very wonderful experience. awakening, as Krishna sometimes also forgets. Do you all know, right? It's unbelievable. No one can understand, but Krishna forgets, and he forgets because of his internal potency. And then he also, same thing as Prabhupada, his awakening, his prime duties. Vijayanand Sridhari.
In November 1935, he was again with his spiritual master in Vrindavan. It was the Kartika season, the ideal time to visit Vrindavana, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was staying for a month with his disciples at peaceful Radha Kund, the sacred lake where Radha and Krishna used to sport. After leaving Bombay in July, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had gone to Calcutta, where he had spoken on radio, delivered many public lectures, welcomed back the preachers he had sent to Europe, and finished publishing his Srimad Bhagavatam translation and commentary. Then in October, he had come to Radhakund. Occupying the small one-story house Bhakti Vinod Thakur had constructed, he had been reading and speaking to the assembled devotees on the Upanishads, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srimad Bhagavatam. He had also installed deities at Sri Kunjavihari Mutt. So in Kartika season, which is in November, again Prabhupada was spending time with his spiritual master in Vrindavan at Vrindavan. There, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta stayed for a month with his disciples at Radha Kund, where Radha and Krishna used to sport. So in July, after leaving Bombay, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati had moved to Calcutta, and there he used to deliver many public lectures and also spoken on radio, and he welcomed back the preachers whom he had sent to Europe, and even he finished Srimad Bhagavatam translations and commentary. So again in October, he came to Vrindavan and stayed at Radha Kund in a one-story building which was constructed by Bhakti Vinoda Thakur. And there he used to speak about Upanishads, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Srimad Bhagavatam to the devotees who had assembled there. And even he installed deities at Kunjavihari Mutt.
Very nice. Thank you. Maybe did I miss? I hope I didn't miss anyone, right? Oh, Vijay, yeah.
The banks of Radhakunda were overhung with bright green foliage growing from the gnarled branches of ancient tamarind, tamala, and neem trees. In the shallows of the water, cranes stood like stilt-like legs, while river terns skimmed across the lake, sometimes abruptly diving for fish. Sometimes a tortoise would poke its nose up from the water's depth, or a fish would jump. Green parrots, usually in pairs, flew in and out of the green trees, and sparrows chirped and hopped from place to place. Peacocks were also there, mostly in nearby gardens, as were occasional rabbits and even deer. The atmosphere was enriched with the history of Krishna Lila. 5,000 years ago, Radha and Krishna had engaged in transcendental pastimes here, and only 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya had rediscovered Radha Kunda. Lord Chaitanya's great follower, Raghunatha Dasa Goswami, had resided here for many years, constantly chanting Hare Krishna and discussing the activities of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And here in small Bhajana Katira, Krishnadasa Kaviraja had written Chaitanya Charitamrita, the narrative of the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati relished so much. Many of the inhabitants of Radhakunda were Babajis, living in small Bhajana Kutiras and spending their time chanting Hare Krishna. So these paragraphs explain the natural beauty of Radhakund, like how beautiful it was naturally. So it describes like what are all the creatures we can see there. It starts with the trees, like it has tamarind trees and neem trees there. And in the shallow of the water, cranes were there, like waiting for standing in a stilt-like lake, and it's waiting for to catch some of the fishes. And there's a tortoise which poke his nose from the depth of the water, as well as there are parrots, pair of parrots were in pairs, flew in and out of the green trees. And it also describes about the sounds the sparrows produce, the chirping sound, and the sparrows are hopping from one place to another place. And it also describes that place had peacocks as well as rabbits and deers. And so this atmosphere was captured in the history of Krishna Lila 5,000 years ago. Radha and Krishna had their transcendental pastimes here. And 500 years ago, Lord Chaitanya also discovered the Radha Kund. And it also described Lord Chaitanya's follower Raghunath Dasa Goswami resided here for many years, and where he chanted Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And also in the small, most of the people who live here are many of the inhabitants at the Radha Kund were Babajis, who are living in a small bhajana kutras and spending their life chanting Hare Krishna.
Such a beautiful because if you know, according to Rupa Goswami, the most sublime and spiritual highest abode in this world, in this universe, is Radha Kund. That's the nectar of instruction. So this is a brief description what it is. Prabhupada is narrating how it was like that those days. It's the most worshipful place for everybody. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also released this hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita compiled by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. Having heard of his spiritual master's stay here, Abhay, bringing his son with him, had traveled from Bombay just to have darshan of his spiritual master. To see Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was always an occasion for jubilation, but to see him in Vrindavan was an added perfection. This meeting with his beloved guide and friend was different from the time in 1932 when Abhay had seen him on the Vrindavan Parikrama. Now Abhay was no longer sitting anonymously in the back of the room. So you all remember that we discussed this part. Now he was a bona fide disciple, recognized as the Kavi, who had written the praiseworthy poem and essay, the young man who listened well, the devotee who had held the Allahabad Matha and who had established the Matha in Bombay. Already on his visit, Abhay has had occasion to be alone with his spiritual master, who had remembered Abhay's son and presented him with a small bandi jacket. And now, as they walked together alone on the bank of the Radha Kund, Bhaktisiddhanta turned and spoke confidentially to Abhay. This is nice. I'm going to read this. There had been some quarreling amongst his leading disciples in Calcutta, he said. This Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is speaking to Prabhupada. He said, and this distressed him very much. Even now in Vrindavan, it weighed heavily on his mind. Some of his disciples had been fighting over who would use various rooms and facilities at the Gaudiya Math headquarters in Calcutta. These devotees were all members of the same Math, and the building was for propagating Krishna consciousness under the leadership of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Yet, even in their spiritual master's presence, they were quarreling. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas were supposed to be free from envy of any creature. What to speak of envy of one another? If they were to fight now, what would they do after their spiritual master passed away? Abhay had no part in these matters and did not even know the details or who was involved. But as he listened to his spiritual master, he also became distressed. This is a very confidential relationship this is. So Abhay had a desire always to meet his spiritual master. So when he found out he's resting in Vrindavan, he came to Vrindavan both because he loves Vrindavan, he loves his spiritual master in Vrindavan both. So this time he's accompanied with his son. Now that scenario was given last time when he came 1932, Abhay was totally unknown. When we saw Abhay, he was in the same room with all the sannyasis and other devotees when he was giving class. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't pay any attention. And he's like, was sitting there. When he left also, but now things are different. Abhay is very, is contributed, his position is well known, everything is known. And with when this is what's called sharing confidential, spiritual master sharing confidential to his trusted devotee, the incident. If you know, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur didn't compromise and taking anything for the name of preaching Krishna consciousness. So he built that sophisticated matta in Calcutta. What Bagh? What is the Bagh? Is it written here? Yeah, I forgot the Bagh. So now, what is that?
I think Bagh Bazaar.
Bagh Bazaar, Bagh Bazaar. Bagh Bazaar Matta, yeah. So now he's feeling painful as disciples are deviating from the purpose. They're coming to, they gave up everything trying to take this renounced outer life and serving the spiritual, rather than serving the spiritual master's mission. They're fighting who will take the best of the room. Various rooms, fighting who would take the various rooms. Unbelievable. This was a big lesson for Prabhupada. Prabhupada knew these mentalities of the people. Even his time also, he was very, very careful on these subjects. These experiences helped him a lot. So, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur revealed his heart and mind, that how painful he's thinking. I'm here, in front of me, this is happening. What they will do when I'm gone? All this hard work, 64 months he established, is going to be useless when disciples, when the followers fight for this thing and not understanding the purpose of the spiritual master's mission. That's very, so he also very distressed by seeing this, because he feels part of it. He feels it's part of serving spiritual master's mission. Very much.
Deeply concerned, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said to Abhay, Agun
Jwalbe. Agun Jwalbe.
There will be fire. One day there would be fire in the Calcutta Gaudiya Mutt, and that fire of party interest would spread and destroy. Abhay heard but did not know what to make of it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had fought so long and boldly to establish that anyone of any birth could be elevated to become a Brahmana, a sannyasi, or a Vaishnava. But if his followers became contaminated by a little wealth and the desire for prestige, thereby showing themselves to be still low-class men, despite their training and purification, then his mission would be disrupted. If in the name of a religious they became attached to age, position, and prestige, it could only mean that they had failed to grasp the teaching of their spiritual master.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada, he was lamenting that these men are simply after the stones and bricks of the building. He condemned, he was very, very sorry.
So here, Prabhupada, this word, Prabhupada remembers of his spiritual master saying, there will be fire. There will be fire means there will be fire in the movement. Agun Jalbe, Agun Jalbe. One day there will be fire. This kind of people have this mentality. He brought these people to bring them, irrespective of what of the background it is, to make them the highest class. sannyasi in the highest ashram also, sannyasi, brahmana, sannyasi, and Vaishnava. But still, if they come and they're again, old habits, they don't go very easily. And still act like a low-class man, fighting for these small things. That is very much condemned. If in the name of religion they will become attached to each position and prestige, it could not only mean that they had failed to grasp the teachings of the spiritual master. So no one understood in spite of all these teachings. So Prabhupada is saying, he was lamenting because people are, after coming to Hare Krishna, you're looking at the walls and this and that. Many times it happens. People are towards those things. Who can read now? Second,
When we were living in a rented house, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, if we could collect 200 or 300 rupees, we were living very nicely at Ultadanga. We were happier then. But since we have been given this marble palace in Bagh Bazaar, there is friction between our men. Who will occupy this room? Who will occupy that room? Who will be the proprietor of this room? Everyone is planning in different ways. It would be better to take the marble from the walls and secure money. If I could do this and bring books, that would be better. Abhay felt his spiritual master speaking to him in urgency, as if asking him for help or warning him to avert a disaster. But what could he do? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta then said directly to Abhay, Amar Icha Chila Khichu Bai Karana. I had a desire to print some books. If you ever get money, print books. Standing by Radha Kund and beholding his spiritual master, Abhay felt the words deeply enter his own life. If you ever get money, print books. So here in these paragraphs, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta shares with Abhay basically why everyone was, his disciples were quarreling. When they did not have the big palace, when they were there in a rented house at Ultadanga, they were very happy. But since they moved, they have been given this marble palace. There was always fighting for who is going to be occupying in this room and that room. And Bhaktisiddhanta said that he would wish to take the marble from the walls and use it for printing books. So Abhay felt that his spiritual master was giving an important message, and Bhaktisiddhanta told him directly that if you ever have money, to print books, and this was one of the important instructions that he got from his spiritual master, and it stayed with him his whole life.
Very nice. So if that's why Prabhupada also is the same instruction. If you have a big temple, he has so many devotees, but if devotees don't read books, don't distribute books, then there's no purpose behind having all these things. So it has to go together. One should not go to big infrastructure. Yes.
Okay. December 1936. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was in poor health at Jagannath Puri. Abhay was in Bombay and he wanted to write his Guru Maharaj a letter. He is little kind upon me. Abhay thought, he will understand my request. And he began to write, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances at your lotus feet. You have got many disciples. I am one of them, but they are doing direct service to you. Some of them are brahmacharis, some of them are sannyasis, but I am a householder. I cannot. Sometimes I give monetary help while I cannot give you direct service. Is there any particular service I can do? Okay. 2 weeks later.
You can go up to, this is good, you finished one section. Please summarize.
Okay. So when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's health was poor in Jagannath Puri, Prabhupada decided to like write a letter to his Guru Maharaj, and he said he has, and he said he gives monetary help, but he cannot give um Bhakti Siddhanta. He
Direct service.
cannot, yeah, Bhakti Siddhanta direct service. And then he asked if he can do anything, any particular service, and he can do.
Nice. Right. So he basically requested, I'm his position that I cannot do. I'm not unfortunate enough to do direct service, but is there anything I can particularly do so to please you? Very nice. So who is going to read, Mataji?
2 weeks later, Abhay received a reply. I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of the other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself into a very good English preacher if you serve the machine to inculcate the novel impression of Lord Chaitanya's teachings in the people in general as well as philosophers and religionists. Abhay at once recognized this to be the same instruction he had received at their first meeting in 1922. He took it as a confirmation. There was now no doubt as to the purpose of his life. What his spiritual master had said in Calcutta in 1922 had not been a chance remark, nor had that been a chance meeting. The instruction was the same. Turn yourself into a very good English preacher. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. Prabhupada got reply from his spiritual master Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. In that letter also he mentioned he should become a very good English preacher. It is good for himself and as well as the audience. He thought that it is the in 1922 also in their first meeting his spiritual master asked to do the same. Now also he gave that same order, so he thought it was not a chance, it was not like a random thing. It is the main advice or order from his spiritual master, he thought.
That's why his prayer is Paschyata Desatarani, delivering his particularly descended to deliver the Western countries, especially who are covered with voidism and impersonalism. That's great. So we will finish this today. Who is going to read? Prasant, you can read.
Srila Bhakti Siddhanta passed away from the mortal world on January 1st, 1937. He had been spending his last days reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and chanting on his beads. When a doctor had visited him wanting to give him an injection, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta had protested, "Why are you disturbing me in this way? Simply chant Hare Krishna, that's all." Amongst his last words to his disciples were, "I advise all to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunatha, disciples of Lord Chaitanya, with all energy and resources. Our ultimate goal shall be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunatha Goswamis. You should all work conjointly under the guidance of your spiritual master with a view to serve the absolute knowledge, the personality of Godhead. You should live somehow or other without any quarrel in this mortal world, only for the service of Godhead. Do not please give up the service of Godhead, in spite of all dangers, criticisms, and all discomforts. Do not be disappointed, for most people in the world do not serve the personality of Godhead. Do not give up your own service, which is your everything and all. Neither reject the process of chanting and hearing of the transcendental holy names of the Godhead. You should always chant the transcendental name of Godhead with patience and forbearance like a tree and humbleness like a straw. There are many amongst you who are well qualified and able workers. We have no other desire whatsoever. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati passed away January 1st, 1937. During his last days, he was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita and chanting. So I think it explains what one should do in their last days, chanting and reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. And also he gave advice to all his disciples on chanting, and also what is the ultimate goal. It is to become the dust of lotus feet of Sri Sri Rupa and Raghunatha Goswamis. And also he advised to preach on their teachings. And he also emphasized on the service of Godhead, and also on chanting, and to not to give up their service, and to hear chanting and hearing is very much essential for a devotee, and to be humble like straw and tolerant like a tree. There are many among us. He also encouraged his disciples that they are qualified and able, and they should preach. We have no other desire whatsoever.
Very nice. Who is going to read next? Speaker, you can do that.
In his last days, he had remained fully conscious and had given instructions until the end. He had specifically and openly ordered that the affairs of his Gaudiya Mutt be maintained by a 12-man governing body, which the devotees should select among themselves. Finally, he said, "Please accept my blessings to you all, present and absent. Please bear in mind that our sole duty and religion is to spread and propagate service to the Lord and of his devotees." At 5:30 a.m. on Jan 1st, he breathed his last. World very, word very soon reached Abhay in Bombay. His immediate response was to cry with grief. No more the joy of an anticipated meeting, no more trips to Calcutta or Vrindavan on the plea of business just to see the tall, commanding form of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, the evangelic angel. This sense of never meeting again was difficult to bear. Philosophically, Abhay knew that there was no reason to lament. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had come into the world to execute the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and now it was required that he leave this place and go to another, where he would again engage in the same activity. Yet, even armed with this philosophy, Abhay felt all alone. His two great well-wishers were gone, his father and now his spiritual master. But he felt grateful that he had received a special mercy, a final instruction, just 2 weeks before his spiritual master's departure. Abhay read this letter again and again. There would not be another. The intimate talks and meetings were now gone. But by this letter, especially, Abhay would live in the instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The letter had come just in time. Now he knew for certain, no matter what anyone else said, how to please his spiritual master and stay linked with Krishna. Following his order, he would conquer the feelings of loss at the disappearance of his most affectionate well-wisher. So here we see that in his last days, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and he kept giving instructions to his disciple until he breathed his last. And then we see that how he handed over the Gaudiya Math to the next generation. Like he ordered that a 12-man governing body, which the devotees should select among themselves and then maintain Gaudiya Math. And then finally, I mean, he just asked, I mean, he just had said that please accept my obeisances to all, present and absent. And then he said, please bear in mind that only sole duty and religion is to spread and propagate the service of Lord and his devotees. And he breathed his last. And then when Abhay heard about his spiritual master's disappearance, his immediate response was to just cry with grief. And then because he was missing the intimate associations with his spiritual master, though he knew philosophically that his spiritual master was here, and then he's preached the message, and then he's going back to a next destination to preach the same, but still the loss of spiritual master greatly affected him. He missed him a lot. And then he felt that the instruction that he received, the letter from his spiritual master, came just in time, just 2 weeks before he left this mortal world. And then now he knew very for sure that no matter what anybody else did, he already got the instruction for his spiritual master to preach and then to print books whenever he has money. So following this, and then he said that he would conquer the feeling of loss, the disappearance of his most affectionate well-wisher.
Wonderful and wonderful and wonderful. Such a nice narration. I don't know what to say. Hope everybody relished this this instruction, and Prabhupada's heart, he carried into his heart. And it's a big impact, a big move for Prabhupada in his life, this thing. Anyone has any comments, reflections? Anyone want to say something? And we'll end it now, but anyone have any questions? Thank you. I thank you all for joining.
I have one doubt here.
Yeah.
So before Prabhupada also, the preachers went abroad. So
Yeah, that's the thing. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur sent some of his disciples to UK, London, but they could not. They said, "Who can please these people? They are not going to change. They could not do any impact over there." Then again, Prabhupada gets final instruction again, desire from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that you preach people who cannot understand. And Prabhupada, now we will see, if you all know, up to now is the only foundation, there's nothing, isn't it? The real moment is going to come. How challenge, it's not so easy. All these experiences we will hear, but at least you see the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's desire and how difficult. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also left without anyone. His father left, his spiritual master left. Prabhupada also, he's ended with this danger, who is going to unite and keep this Gaudiya Math. But his spiritual master already told there's going to be fire. So yes, other devotees had tried. No one came to America, only Prabhupada came to America. First he said he didn't go to London, he came to America directly. We'll hear that part. Okay. I hope everyone relished. Thank you so much for your participation and joining and finishing this sincerely. This is more relishing, isn't it? The real incidents, everything. So we will continue with our chapter 5 tomorrow. How shall I serve you? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave him instruction. Preach in the language which other people do not know in Western countries. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night. You busy today?